redemption or a reckoning? The Attorney General of Texas on trial at the state capitol, accused of abusing the considerable power granted him by voters. On the troubled border, a federal judge orders removal of those controversial river barriers, with the governor vowing to fight back. And as brutal heat continues to pummel the Lone Star State, the power grid bends without breaking. Amid calls for conservation, what must be done moving forward to ensure the power we all need? I'm Greg Groogan, and welcome to What's Your Point, where our panelists call it like they see it. Let's greet them. Starting us off, longtime Fox 26 legal analyst Chris Tritico. Next up, Bob Price, associate editor of Breitbart, Texas. In the 3 spot, former Houston City Council member Sue Lovell. Batting cleanup today, well-known businessman and columnist for Real Clear Politics, Bill King. And closing us out, Marcus Davis, highly regarded restaurateur and host of Fish, Grits, and Politics. Let's begin.
Those allegations are flat out false. The Attorney General pleads not guilty.
Suspended Texas Attorney General Ken Paxton claiming he did absolutely nothing wrong. The proclamation of innocence came on the floor of the Texas Senate during day 1 of an historic impeachment trial. It was the only time Texans got to lay eyes on their top cop, who declined to face his accusers, opting instead to leave the upper chamber and his wife as a jury of 30 senators considers the evidence and decides his fate. At the core of the case against Paxton, the testimony of his top lieutenants, 7 of whom allege he corruptly weaponized the immense power of the agency to serve businessman Nate Paul.
I concluded that Mr. Paxton was engaged in conduct that was immoral, unethical, and I had a good faith belief that it was illegal.
I was deeply concerned that the name and authority and power of our office had been, in my view, hijacked to serve the interests of an individual against the interest of the broader public.
With each and every one of their motions to dismiss rejected by the jury on opening day, Paxton's spirited defense team has pushed back, characterizing the whistleblowers as mutineers engaged in a political coup, falsely justified by half-baked assumptions and incomplete facts. Panel, week 1 of this trial is in the books. What sticks out? Gotta start with our top legal analyst, Chris Tritico.
So several things stick out in my view. First was on the first day when Tony Busby entered this not guilty plea. I don't agree with the way he even started that. You just say not guilty. You don't make speeches about that. But the opening statements I thought were not well given. Nobody laid out a case. The House manager's opening statement, they have an hour to give 15 minutes, and they didn't tell us anything. They didn't tell us what was going on. They didn't lay out what happened, what they say Ken Paxton did. And so they left us with this, everybody saying, why are we here? That was a horrible first day for the House managers. The witness that I think so far has given us the best case of the whole trial so far was the
Ranger, Maxwell.
Maxwell. That really sealed the whole case for me.
Bill, you and I have been talking some during this. You thought the lawyering left something to be desired as well.
For these really, really good lawyers, big reputations, I was frankly like Chris, I was like, seriously? It's like nobody was prepared. They couldn't get their exhibits organized. All the sniping back and forth between the lawyers. By the way, Chris State, you would never get away with this stuff in a regular courtroom. A judge would never put up with the conduct that you've been seeing there. Now, I think overall, I give Patrick pretty high marks for the way he's been conducting the trial. But if I were him, I would rein in those lawyers because it's disrespectful and it's below the dignity of the proceeding. But I agree with Chris. Maxwell was really sort of the nail in the coffin. His testimony was unbelievable.
All right, Bob, I know you keep a close eye on this stuff and have been watching.
Well, and I've been very fortunate that my learned lawyer wife, Lana Shadwick, has been watching this intently and briefing me on it as we go, and I'm very happy with that. So one thing I learned in 30 years of commercial sales is you try to under-promise and over-deliver. And in this case, Tony Busby's done exactly the opposite of that. He's promised the sky, that they're going to just disprove everything. And the reality is they're not bringing any of that in the cross-examination. Maxwell's testimony was amazing, and just the way Ken Paxton treated Maxwell, a 50-year law enforcement professional, 30 some odd years as a Texas Ranger, testified in thousands of cases, was heavily involved in the Resendez Ramirez case here in Houston, the serial rail car killer, an icon of Texas law enforcement. And the way he treated this man and just summarily dismissed him because he wouldn't go and use the weight of the Attorney General's office to investigate the Department of Public Safety and the FBI and go after these law enforcement who Vassar testified that Paxton had no respect for, including the state's DPS. I mean, how telling is that as to what's going on there?
All right, Marcus Davis, this whole trial is probably an empirical example of what you see as what's wrong with government.
It is, and I'm going to get to that. But I got to go to the lawyer point. I thought you guys missed a great piece of lawyering, right? Tony Busby hit it out the park. He sent out a notice saying that he thought the media put up a bad photo of him. That he did. Did y'all not see that?
Yeah.
His biggest contention was that, hey, this news station has the right complexion of me. This news station has me sunburned. And that's where his focus was, right? He's off the rails. And that's why this trial is off the rails. You ask what sticks out most? This theme that we hear, whether it's in the state, whether it's local, whether it's federal. All of the accusations of this is not me, this is some trumped up charges, a political attack on me. Everybody's blaming the other party and other political agendas for what they are being accused of. How about you say, no, you did what you did, and that's why you're in this position. My mom used to say, baby, I don't care how much deodorant you put on. If 3 people tell you you musty, you musty. And this is musty, right? You can't blame this on anyone else. Same goes in the feds. The Trumps, the Bidens, they want to blame the other party. Speaking of wanting them to use, Paxton wanted them to use his law dog to go and attack his department. That's the same move that Trump did when he was president and wanted to use the Attorney General to have the election overturned. It stinks from the highest down to the lowest.
We're going to hear from Sue in the next segment. Still to come, a Houston congressman is calling gender-affirming health care for kids pseudoscience. That shouldn't get a single penny of taxpayer support. And in our Sunday survey, we are asking viewers if they favor or oppose pulling federal funding from hospitals delivering gender transition treatment to children. Tell us what you think. Vote on our webpage, fox26houston.com. Just click on poll at the top of the page or tell 26 using our news app. But up next, the Paxton impeachment defense. Have the Attorney General's lawyers poked any significant holes in the case against their client?
Once you heard all these foolishness concerns, some of which you might have believed, some of which you didn't, your job at that point in time was to go to the boss. Isn't that right?
I had tried to go to the boss.
Is it because you wanted to be the Attorney General? Is that what was going on?
Paxton attorney Tony Busby doing what defense lawyers do, that is, challenge the motives of prosecution witnesses. And while the efficacy of that effort thus far remains in question, we do know trial watchers were given a bushel basket of testimony which could prove pivotal. I found this statement by former Deputy Attorney General Ryan Vassar particularly compelling.
He felt that Mr. Paul was being railroaded by the FBI and by DPS. And General Paxton said that he didn't trust law enforcement. He asked us to find a way to release the information that had been requested to be withheld.
The significance: Paxton ordered the public release of a confidential case file containing the names and personal information of FBI and DPS agents investigating Nate Paul in contravention of the law enforcement exception to open records request. Panel, question: is that obstruction of a federal investigation? What does it sound like to you, Sue?
It does, but let me say the worst enemy to Paxton right now is Paxton. I mean, first of all, look, he doesn't show up at all to the trial and sit there. In his own voice, he doesn't plead not guilty. But the woman that he betrayed, that he took a vow to, she has to sit there every single day and listen to all of the things that her husband did while he gets to go off and get a massage or do something else. He should be convicted on that alone. You know, and whatever Nate Paul has on him, it must be something really good.
All right, Chris Tritico, the law enforcement exception, I mean, was this extraordinary to release this amount of information?
Not only that, there's hundreds, literally hundreds of Attorney General opinions that he signed to government saying you can't release this because of the law enforcement exception that he's been signing since he's been Attorney General. And for one person, he said, give this out and forget the law enforcement exception. And so he, in the face of all of these other opinions, he said, give this out. And so that's what I think the Justice Department is going to be looking at the end of this trial. And if you look at his Attorney General opinions, nowhere else has he said there is an exception to the law enforcement exception except for Nate Paul.
Bill, is this the strongest allegation you think?
Yeah, so we're calling it an exception. This is a mandatory exception. It says you cannot release this. There's permissible exceptions under the Open Records Act, which, you know, the government can decide whether they want to release it or not. But this is a mandatory. This is confidential information that you cannot release. And so this was a violation of Texas law, and the obvious only reason to do that would be to help Nate Paul avoid prosecution at the federal level. That sounds like to me a pretty clear case of obstruction of justice, which is exactly what Texas Ranger David Maxwell said on the stand. By the way, if you haven't watched his testimony, that is the most crucial part of this case. And the fact that he treated this storied Hall of Fame Texas Ranger the way he did, I would vote to impeach him on that, if nothing else.
Bob, I was talking to a federal agent yesterday, and I was relaying this stuff, and he said, you got to be kidding me. He did that. I mean, do you think that will be the unanimous reaction from most folks in law enforcement?
I certainly think that that's the case. And when you look at one of the things that I thought on the opening day was the vote on the pretrial motions to dismiss these charges. You know, people, including former Governor Rick Perry, came out and said the people need to see this testimony. They need to see the facts of this case. And the senators voted by a 2/3 majority, which is what is required for conviction, on almost all but one of these counts to carry those on. Look at these witnesses and what they gave up from their lives to come out on their personal beliefs of what they witnessed happening in the Attorney General's office.
All right, we're going to leave it there. Up next, the smoking Texas summer redlining our state's power grid. What should be done to boost the dwindling supply of electrons? Welcome back. Heat, relentless, extreme, punishing heat, continuing to cook the Lone Star State, pushing our overworked power grid to its limits. The Electric Reliability Council has asked Texans no fewer than 10 times this smoldering summer to voluntarily limit consumption of electrons in a thus far successful effort to avoid rolling blackouts. That said, I think we all know luck is finite and some serious action is demanded.
The fact is the state has been growing and we've not been adding to the fleet of generation that we require. The gross domestic product of Texas in 2010 was $1.25 trillion. In 2021, it was $1.99 trillion. A lot of business has moved to Texas. We have not been out in front of building electricity generation capacity in advance of economic activity.
Panel, roughly 1,000 brand new power consumers move to our state each and every day, and I think we can all agree demand is outstripping supply, and the status quo is proving unsustainable. Marcus Davis, you run businesses. This matters to you. And it matters to us all, but particularly, you know, what's your take here?
You know, I think what Heinz said hit the nail on the head, and this is visible on the local level and on the national level, right? Our eye is off the ball. We are focused too much on a lot of little stuff, a lot of petty stuff, a lot of partisan stuff, and it keeps us from being proactive. In business, if we want to be successful, we've got to think about long term. We've got to think about tomorrow. The idea that we in 2010 didn't think about 2020 with regard to the grid shows a lack of vision. The idea that in 2022, 2023, we're not thinking about the next 5 years, the next 10, 15 years, is a problem. People who are being represented by our legislatures need to raise the flag, sound the alarm about let's get off of this poppycock and get to the business at hand. So, now, I got to say, no, I'll wait till overtime.
Sue, one of the things that I admire about you is your ability to kind of look in the future and plan a little bit. Have we poorly planned? Have we let energy traders trying to limit the supply so they can maximize profits kind of have too much power, no pun intended?
Well, I don't know, but I agree with Marcus. You know, when we have elected officials worrying about somebody's gender affirming issues and not worrying about big issues that affect the total population, then people's priorities are really wrong. You would think there'd be a formula in place that says, oh, so many people are moving in, and that means we need to provide this much more energy. It seems pretty simple, doesn't it? Well, it's got to be a priority for you. I will say through this brutal summer, when they said, hey, the grid could go down, none of us thought they were kidding. Everybody thought it could be serious, which I think helped in the conservation. But no, the priorities are wrong. You need to plan, and you need to plan for people moving in.
I'm certain Bill King has something to say on this, but 30 seconds want Bob to get into.
What they both said. You know, I mean, we're not, the main thing is not the main thing when it comes to politics today. We're worried about all these fringe issues, what gets primary voters, you know, excited. I will say a couple things about the grid. One is summertime problems are different than wintertime. They're not likely to lead to the catastrophic failure that we had in Uri. It'd be sort of rolling blackouts. But also your 1,000 new Texans coming in, that number is clearly on the decline now, which the good news about that, it may give us a chance to catch up on some of these things in the future.
Yeah, well, Bob may disagree because they're coming from the other side of the border too. And when Bob dips his shoulder, that means he's ready to talk. I've been doing this with him a long time. Go ahead, Bob.
I spoke with ERCOT Communications Director Mark Miner this week on a related matter, but we did talk about this issue. And the grid has held up under these circumstances. Yes, this is different than wintertime when natural gas generators aren't as efficient as they are right now. But the fact is, asking people to conserve energy during peak consumption periods is nothing new. This has gone on forever. And the grid has held up. The demand never hit capacity. There were no blackouts. There were no rolling brownouts or blackouts. And so they did a good job in maintaining this. Yes, we absolutely have to plan and get more stuff built for the future.
Chris, close us out here.
Yeah, I rather suspect that the failure of the generation of more power is a function of what Marcus said, politics, and also the power companies are making money off the fact that we don't have enough power generation. They get to build more, and so there's probably not enough incentive for them to build more power plants. It costs a lot of money, billions of dollars to build these things. We're making money. We don't need to build more, so we need some incentive to build more. And we need politicians to focus on the issue of where we're going with this. We're bringing business in as we should, but we have to get the politicians to look at the long-term effect of what we're doing, and we're not.
Okay, we're going to leave it there. We're going to keep an eye on it. When we come back, Congressman Dan Crenshaw on the offensive. His target, gender transition health care for American kids. Welcome back. During his time in Congress, Representative Dan Crenshaw has waged some highly vocal crusades. The decorated former Navy SEAL has placed the Mexican drug cartels on his legislative missile lock, and more recently taken aim at federal funding, which supports gender transition care for minors.
First, let's start with the so-called science of transitioning a minor into a different gender. There is no science backing that up. There's no science showing that there's these benefits associated with doing these therapies, whether that's puberty blockers, hormone therapy, or actual surgical interventions. In fact, it's quite the opposite. All of the systematic reviews, which is the gold standard of evidence-based care, which looks at all of the different studies and puts them together and analyzes them properly, show that there's little to no evidence that there's any benefits to this whatsoever. So you're imposing a very, very drastic change, a physiological permanent change on a child, and you can't show any benefits. That's a really big problem. So what we've done at the federal levels, I've introduced a bill, and we've gotten it to the House floor. We'll have that debate on the House floor soon, on whether we're going to fund children's hospitals programs, their GME programs, graduate medical education programs, if they're doing these kind of transitions. And look, that's how you fight in a divided government. You've got to take must-pass bills like this one, the funding for these hospitals, and you've got to attach our own values to it, and that's what we're doing.
Crenshaw says the number of children diagnosed with gender dysphoria in the U.S. has increased by at least 20% each year, dating back to 2017, a phenomenon he believes is being fueled in part by social media.
It becomes the explanation that they were looking for. It becomes the causality that they were looking for when it really wasn't. And so it has become this sort of social contagion, really fueled by social media and, of course, easy access to the internet. And a lot of groups who are telling people very dishonest things like, hey, there's only a 1% chance that you'll regret it. Those are not well done studies. These are bogus studies that doctors are telling parents and children, and people need to know about this. Because, you know, they didn't believe this stuff 10 years ago. Nobody did. Nobody thought it was a good idea to do a double mastectomy on a 12-year-old girl 10 years ago. Just like now we don't believe that lobotomies are okay for mental health care or electroshock therapy. And this is certainly in that category. It's become a social contagion. It's certainly what concerns me most. Yeah, I mean, because I care about people, I would advise you not to go under these therapies or surgical interventions, no matter how old you are. But what we are concerned about is minors. You know, they do not have the mental faculties to make these decisions. Parents are either ideologically predisposed to make those decisions in a very unfortunate manner, or they're being bullied by doctors who are ideologically predisposed to make those decisions. And we have to draw a line there. And that's what Texas is doing, and that's what I'm doing at the federal level.
When we come back, dangerous pseudoscience or life-preserving medicine? Our panel wades in on the controversial topic of helping kids alter their gender in taxpayer-supported clinics. Welcome back. Cutting off federal funding to teaching hospitals who deliver gender transitioning surgery and therapies to minors. Congressman Dan Crenshaw says it's necessary to counter what he calls pseudoscience and to avoid irreversible damage to tens of thousands of vulnerable children. Panel, what's your point? I'm going to start with you, Chris Tritico.
You know, I've thought about this issue a lot, a whole lot, and I do not in any form or fashion agree with any of the rhetoric attacking transgender people. But I could support not allowing the surgery of someone under the age of majority, because I don't think that someone who's under the age of majority has had time to sufficiently decide what they're going to be. And so I think that they should have a chance to go pass through puberty, and I know that that's a lot to think about, but pass and decide what's going to happen, because you change your mind about a lot of things, and there's some things you just can't put back together. And so I don't think that our government should be blocking people from wearing the clothes they want to wear, saying that they're a girl when they're a guy, but we should. I don't think a bill that says we're not going to allow these surgeries is a problem.
I want to be real clear. Crenshaw says when people reach the age of adulthood, 18, they should be able to do whatever they want. That's a fundamental freedom. Sue, you want to wade in here?
I think the congressman should spend his time on more important issues that affect, you know, the larger population. These are really very difficult decisions for families to be in and for decisions to be made. And the decisions should be made by the family and not by congresspeople that decide what they think is right when they don't have real knowledge of what is going on. And I agree with Chris. I think some of these decisions can be left for the person themselves to make when they become an adult. But other decisions need to be made, and Crenshaw should worry about bigger issues that affect more of the citizens, and like our energy crisis, like the border crisis, like different things that we need to solve. Use his resource and effort on that, and leave families alone to deal with their own problems.
Okay, our Sunday survey reflects what is the majority view in Texas, and that they don't believe that federal money should be used for this, and kind of a big stick he's talking about here, taking away money. Bill, your thoughts here, and then we're going to go.
Well, I understand
around
what the
horn.
bill does. It takes away any money if you do these procedures, not just to finance these procedures, but any money that you would get for research. This issue I find very difficult to get my brain around. One thing I'll say about waiting to 18, apparently to do this, you have to start the puberty blocking drugs well before the age of 18. And so if you're a parent facing this, you really are forced to make some decisions earlier than 18 about how to do it. I don't really understand the issue, but I will say this. At some point in time, we got to decide, are the parents in charge of their children or not? And we were last week complaining about Katie not telling parents, and now we're telling parents that even if you make the decision that this is what your child needs, you're not going to allow the parent to make that decision. I don't know. I kind of trust parents to do what they think is best for their kids and not just assume that they've been misled or bullied by somebody. I think most parents do a pretty good job of taking care of their kids.
Marcus, 45 seconds.
There was been some great points that said here, starting with Bill. This is not about the issue, whether I agree or disagree. The idea that a legislator is saying we want to tell the parent what the parent should or shouldn't do goes against the values of the GOP. It is government overreach, right? In my opinion, right? Well, and this is not to say I agree with the legislation or don't agree with the legislation, but it is telling a parent that you can't make the decision about your child and what they're going to do. But also, going back to Sue's point, I don't think this is what we should be spending our time on as a nation. I'm not saying it's not important, but I'm certainly certain that it is not the main thing. So to craft a legislation that deals with a minuscule issue is problematic. On the other side, a party that promotes these types of things, that causes the rebuttal, also is equally as petty.
Final 30 to you, Bob.
I think protecting children from what many believe is child abuse is very important, and I think Congressman Crenshaw can focus on a lot of different things at the same time, as your interview with him will indicate when you see the entire thing. So this is a very critical issue. Many people believe that particularly performing these kinds of treatments, the medical treatments and the surgeries with prepubescent children, who have no idea who they are. They don't know who they are, what they want to be when they grow up. They haven't figured out any of that. And that's child abuse.
We're going to talk more about it in overtime. Still ahead, a federal judge tells Texas to remove its floating barriers from the Rio Grande. But up next, a toxic hazard that's likely been polluting Buffalo Bayou and Galveston Bay for the past half century. Big question, why hasn't the city of Houston cleaned up its mess? Welcome back. Out of sight, out of mind. Near the shores of Buffalo Bayou, you can still find the remnants of the city's long-shuttered Velasco trash incinerator plant, which closed down for good nearly a half century ago. While most of the structure is gone, an ugly legacy remains. Toxic contamination, more specifically, hard-packed garbage ash running 30 feet deep below the surface. Within the ash, poisons like arsenic, lead, mercury, PCBs, and cancer-causing dioxins at levels two separate environmental reports say exceed minimum safety levels for human touching safety. Here's the clincher. For the past 50 years, the city of Houston and its leaders have done exactly nothing to clean it up. Even though it appears the pollution-laden runoff from the site has been draining into Buffalo Bayou and by extension Galveston Bay for decades. Panel now, the Houston Housing Authority is building hundreds of low-income apartments right next door. Bill King, I know you've looked at this ash. What's the situation here?
As you can see from the video now. So, you know, you and I went out there talking about this housing authority. I used to chair Galveston Bay Foundation. You know, I grew up on Galveston Bay. I care very much about the watersheds that lead into Galveston Bay. And what struck me was, as we were looking at this, is first of all, that ash is exposed every place down there. All of this nonsense about it's capped with a clay is completely false. I mean, you walk down that trail in Buffalo Bayou and it's laying right there on the ground. And as when I had that little hoe, you scrape just a little bit of topsoil off and it's right there. There's a whole section of it on the bank where the bank is eroded away and it's exposed and washing into Buffalo Bayou. There's a ravine at the end of Velasco Street that, you know, you and I walked down into, probably what, 10 or 12 feet deep, and the wall of the ravine is nothing but this ash all the way down, clearly has been running into Galveston Bay. I don't understand, where's the EPA, where's the TCEQ? Why isn't somebody doing anything about this ash washing into Buffalo Bayou?
You know, on that field trip, Sue Lovell was there.
Yeah.
What's your take on this?
I agree with Bill. First, you got to go back to, this isn't city property anymore at all. It belongs, actually, it belongs in, what's it, an LLC, a North Velasco LLC, that now is under the purview of the Buffalo Bayou Partnership.
And Olson's people.
And Olson's people over there, yes.
So
and
what's
if you
going on
follow
here?
where it went, the city had it, and then it was sold, and then it was in the package of which the Housing Authority, it was Cockrell property, of which Cockrell sold that package to the Housing Authority. Then when they ran it through their process, they took off that section because it is so contaminated and set it aside, did their deal, and then set it over at the Buffalo Bayou Partnership in an LLC. You can look it up, North Velasco LLC. That's who owns this there. And it's been there, and it's about 35 deep, when you see from the banks, 35 deep, this ash has been sitting there forever, just leaching into the bayou.
Bill, quickly, this sounds like a shell game.
Well, the property's since been conveyed actually to Buffalo Bayou Partnership, so it's actually owned by that. That's the piece that's at the end of the old incinerator. But there's another pit on the other side where they used to store this stuff, and that is now owned by the Houston Housing Authority, and that is the place where the bank is washed away. I suspect there's more ash going into the bayou from that location than there is even from the old incinerator site.
We're going to keep our eye on this story, okay? When we come back, critics call them an atrocity. Supporters call them a deterrent. We are discussing the court battle over the floating buoys in the Rio Grande. Welcome back. This week, a federal judge ordered Texas to remove its controversial floating barriers from the Rio Grande. Governor Greg Abbott said, not without a fight. Well, the next counterpunch in the battle over the buoys was delivered this weekend by the Fifth Circuit Court of Appeals, which overturned the ban, at least temporarily. Panel, what next? Bob, I know you got a take here.
Well, yes, I do. And first off, this Judge Ezra was a senior judge who was transferred. He was appointed by Ronald Reagan to the District of Hawaii, and was transferred to the Western District of Texas to help with the backlog of cases that they have there. The federal government's not attacking the governor's right to do this to repel an invasion. They're attacking it on it that it's an obstruction to navigable waterways. This isn't a navigable waterway, and it doesn't obstruct any traffic like the airboats that go up and down the river, Border Patrol, Texas DPS, and the Parks and Wildlife. It doesn't obstruct any of that. It's designed to deter people from crossing at that particular point. It's a prototype to see how this works in this environment, and so far it's working. It's not a danger to anybody's health. It's in 18 inches of water. Nobody's going to drown because they get caught up against it or anything like that. So there's a lot of theater in this opposition to this, but the Fifth Circuit saw through that and stayed the order.
Chris, you've probably been watching this argument take place.
Yeah.
Thoughts?
So, well, the definition of a navigable waterway is very broad, and a navigable waterway starts at a bar ditch in front of your house and goes all the way into Galveston Bay, and so it is a navigable waterway for the purposes of federal law.
That, but it's
and
not.
So
carrying
it may
traffic,
not be
so.
navigable waterway in the sense that you can take a boat down it, but it is a navigable waterway. Fifth Circuit stayed it. It's now going to go have arguments in the Fifth Circuit, go to the Supreme Court. I doubt very seriously the Supreme Court's going to help out the Justice Department on this issue. We'll see what happens.
Marcus Davis, is this another example of stuff we shouldn't be paying much attention to?
No, I think on this one, it's an example of the federal judge pointed his gavel the wrong way, right? This is real simple. Texas has a problem at its border, and the federal government isn't doing anything to solve it. And when a state takes their own fate in their hand and decides to come up with ideas on how to solve it, then you have a federal judge that says, no, you can't do it. Well, doggone it, then go tell the president to do something about it. Additionally, you know, I watched the mayor of New York with his propaganda standing up talking about the madman down in Texas is sending people up to New York. Yes, because your president has done zilch about the border down here. So he wanted other people to feel the pain. That's probably one of the few times you'll hear me back Greg Abbott, but you know, there it is.
All right, all right. The independent mind of Marcus Davis. Still to come, Joe Biden's bad numbers 14 months from the next presidential election, and the incumbent is facing some pretty stiff headwinds from the American electorate. President Joe Biden inexplicably walked out of a Medal of Honor presentation ceremony before it was over, leaving Captain Larry Taylor standing alone. The commander-in-chief was on the wrong end of some pretty definitive national polling. A dismal 39% of Americans approve of the job he's doing, and 76% are concerned that he's just too old to effectively serve another term if reelected. Panel, here's the capper. 67% of Democrats and Democratic-leaning voters would prefer another candidate at the top of the party ticket. I'm not even going to talk about the Republicans right now, but I'm going to go to you, Sue. Look, you were a longtime member of the Democratic National Committee. Did these numbers at this point in time, what are we, 14 months from the election, worry you?
Yes, they do. They do. I mean, and I think the numbers are true from we hear people, but you know, it's like, who's it going to be? I mean, it's sort of like how the Republicans are, well, it's Trump. I don't like Trump. But, hey, clearly people want him. Okay, if it isn't Trump, who's it going to be? And I think with Democrats, if it's not him, who's it going to be? And at this late game, who is it that can get enough traction to move forward?
I got a great idea. Have a freaking primary. Yeah. The Democratic Party has done a disservice to their constituents by not allowing them to have a choice of who their candidate for president is. And I think it's a terrible idea and behavior on their part. This is voter suppression at its highest.
Chris, you agree with that?
Well, so this is exactly the concern I had when Joe Biden won the first time, that about the age issue. And so he was the only one who ran the right race the first time and was able to win. And all the other Democrats were running so far to the left that they couldn't get elected. And so this is where we are. But it's a problem.
All right, Bob.
Not to worry, Kamala Harris is ready to take over. So we know who's not going to be the nominee, and that's Gavin Newsom. He backed out now and said that he is not going to be a candidate for president of the United States, that Kamala Harris is the heir apparent to the White House. And that's pretty telling on the sad state of where the Democratic Party. Kudos to you on what you said. That was phenomenal.
Okay, Bill King has written, you know, on and around this subject. Thoughts?
Well, you know, the sad thing about it, as bad as those numbers are, it's basically tied with Donald Trump and the national polling. I mean, this is a result of the two-party system and it being controlled by 20% of people that go vote in the primaries. They give us these unacceptable choices. Most of us go in and have to hold our nose. The most undemocratic force in America today are our two political parties.
Wow. You agree with that real quickly, Marcus?
I agree wholeheartedly. The idea that you know, that third party gets squashed or gets laughed at or scoffed at is atrocious. We need something. And look what America has been conditioned to do. We're conditioned to say, well, I have to vote for Biden because I don't have a choice.
We're going to talk more in overtime, okay? Still ahead. In a deeply divided nation, too often on the cusp of open hostilities, an earnest plea has been issued for a return to civility. Welcome back. Texas, the issue is, airing right here on Fox 26 tonight at 9:45. We'll offer more in-depth analysis of Attorney General Ken Paxton's historic impeachment trial.
In a regular trial, you would have brought in 12 good citizens, maybe a couple of alternates who knew as little as possible about the facts and the people to bring as sort of a blank a slate as possible with the proceedings. We have the exact opposite of that here. We have probably the best informed group of people in the state about these situations, these people, this evidence.
Let's switch gears here. In this troubling era of deep division within our 247-year-old exercise in democracy, 13 presidential centers felt compelled to make a joint call for national civility. The group message emphasized that debate and disagreement are a critical feature of any healthy democratic nation, but should be tempered by respect, tolerance, and when possible, compassion. Qualities, I'm proud to say, which are generally practiced by the participants of this regular gathering in the public square we call What's Your Point? That said, panel, what does this extraordinary gesture tell us about the dismal state of our national discourse? Go to you, Bill.
So every one of our founding fathers warned about allowing political parties to control the government. John Adams said that the organization of two political parties in control was the worst possible evil under our constitutional system. George Washington warned, if you allow this to happen, it will lead to autocracy in America. Every one of them warned us not to do exactly what we've done, which is to allow two political parties to control the country. By the way, there is no other major democracy in the world that only has two political parties.
What do you think of that, Chris?
I agree 100% with what he just said. And you know, when I give speeches to young people or to any group, I always tell them to be the biggest professional in every room you're in, and that means something, because when you're on this stage or any stage, if you can't control your temper, then nobody's listening to you, and we've lost that. We've lost that in the Senate, in the House. People standing up when the president's talking and screaming and hollering and interrupting. We've lost everything that means something. And to watch Marjorie Taylor Greene stand up and do the things she does when the president's giving a speech is just disgusting to me.
I've watched your reverence for the Constitution firsthand, and I know it's real. Right. Bob, I got 15 seconds for you.
Well, for one time, I'm going to agree with George W. Bush that we have lost the ability to disagree respectfully with each other in this country. A lot of that has to do with the anonymity of social media, and really we need to get back to having reasonable discussions.
Gotta go. Thanks to this week's panel, and thank you for joining us. The conversation continues on a national level next on Fox News Sunday with Shannon Bream, and we'll keep talking right here with What's Your Point Overtime, streaming live on fox26houston.com and on our Facebook page. From all of us here, have a safe and healthy week.